Thank you for joining me for this session, Business Strategy Masterclass. It was one of the hot topics when we originally surveyed all of you guys back, it was a good few months ago now. This was one of the hot topics you wanted to know more about. And I think it's probably because you all know that a business without a strategy is really like shooting in the dark, and without a clear vision of your ideal end state and a regular focus on it, you're likely to end up in a different destination than you hoped for. So the purpose of this session is to get you fired up about strategy, give you some simple tools and guidance to help you focus on it, and all with a view to creating 10 times better businesses. So just move to the next slide. So first, as I always do, let's start with why. So we're all naturally driven to focus our time on the things that we want to do. Kind of like full steam ahead without thinking about the bigger picture. It's really exciting to kind of jump in, to get on with that new project. But what I tried to show with these pictures is where that might lead you. With a clear strategy, you can parachute to your ideal destination, and without it, you're in free fall. It's also really common, I think, that once the ball gets rolling with a new project, we get so busy, or particularly with a new business, we get so busy in the operational and the tactical day-to-day that it's really hard to find the time to take a step back and look at what direction we're actually headed in. But I think by looking at the whole picture, by weighing up alternatives and trade-offs, it can have a significantly positive impact on outcomes. So developing strategies, choosing which to do, and really importantly, which not to do, and knowing why is key. So I think most of you will have seen a version of this Venn diagram before. It's the innovation Venn. You can see it has viability, desirability, and feasibility in there. It has product and users in there. But critically to this presentation, it also has strategy in there. I think what I see time and time again, and we're all guilty of this, is that businesses focus on product, they focus on user strategy and tactics, but to the detriment of a more holistic and commercial business strategy. So what I'm trying to bring in here is that, is it viable, is a question that should be asked from day one. We ask it as investors and co-founders, and so should you. Can the business make enough money to become a sustainable, profitable, and desirable investment for all involved? So as the founder, we really want to encourage you to focus on developing your strategy, that reviewing of ideas, testing, reworking until you have one or more that makes sense. And I think even when you've got a clear strategy, and I know that many of you have, there's still going to be lots of assumptions within that chosen strategy that are going to need testing and deselecting, proving, disproving. And even then, when you've proved everything you think you might need to prove, you still may end up pivoting depending upon learning that you're doing, because we're building startups and it's a learning journey. It's not like doing typical corporate businesses. So to move on, we're going to look at the kind of following questions which a business strategy should help you be able to answer. So yes, is this a business worth investing time and money into? So if you think about it, our time, your advisor's time, your user panel, your customers, your users, it's all going to add up. There's a lot of time being invested in these things. And a good business strategy will evidence to you, to your investors, and really any other stakeholder that this is a business worth investing their time and money into, and/or money. I think as soon as you've got a strategy that works on paper, you need to get out there and test whether it's viable with your users, just like you would with a product strategy. And if it isn't viable, then pick another and repeat. So yeah, what is your ideal vision of the future end state? So the better you can envision the future end state, the more likely you're going to get there. I think we all know this. It's common in goal setting. The difficult thing is that true visionaries are few and far between. Most of us probably wouldn't put ourselves in that category, but we understand problems, we see them, and we know we want to get somewhere to try and solve it. So what I'm going to try and introduce is, by using specific tools to develop your strategy, they help even the least visionary of us plan the future simply and quickly, and then work backwards to get there. Do you understand the assumptions being made about your business? So on day one, a business strategy is pretty much 100% assumptions. So I think your job as the founder is firstly to recognize this and be honest with yourself about it. Then documenting those assumptions, prioritizing them, so you can systematically test, prove, disprove, and reduce the assumptions being made. Whatever the outcomes of your testing, whether proving or disproving, obviously then learning, it doesn't really matter whether it's been a positive or a negative test. It's the learning and acting upon that learning to evolve your strategy further. And I think most importantly, not getting bogged down in the detail, always focusing on that simple, single one thing that's going to add the most value right now or remove the highest risk. And actually, with that in mind, it just so happens I was looking on LinkedIn News this morning and there was an article there, I don't know if anyone else has seen it, very short one, about strategic ignorance. And it kind of sums this up perfectly. It's just one of the news writers for LinkedIn. They said strategic ignorance is not about being closed-minded. It's about knowing what you want and knowing that you need to be extremely focused to get it. And I'm going to repeat that message throughout this presentation because strategy can become a behemoth. It's like another thing to think about. You can get lost in analysis paralysis, but actually it's really about moving quickly and finding the next most important thing to do. And yeah, can you move beyond assumptions to a believable business strategy based on real data? So obviously that's your aim. And I think stage by stage, it's slightly different data that's going to feed your strategy. So at problem fit in the early days, your data is likely to be desk research, size of markets, competition, maybe a few limited interviews with friends and family. By the time you move to solution fit, you should have more real world data from a small but growing number of users. You're likely to pivot during solution fit based on this feedback. And in most cases, if you're really onto something, if it's a strong idea, you should be able to make sales or get commitment at this point, even without product. And then for product fit and beyond, we've now got data from active users, looking at that data daily and making decisions. So this is not strategy. This is the tactics part of strategy, but looking at your data daily, making decisions based on it so you can act quickly and meet or exceed the projections around your strategy. And I think finally on this point, what do I focus on next? So strategy sets the direction you are headed in and should guide you to where you need to focus next. The tactics are the choices you make and the actions you take to get there. So there's a key difference between those two things. It's really easy as founders, as entrepreneurs, as co-founders to get lost in the tactics and doing. And it's important for everyone, but particularly for founders, to keep everyone focused on the next most important thing or the biggest risk. So whilst it's inevitable that you're going to get caught up in the tactical doing day to day, it's really critical that you set aside time to raise your head above the parapet regularly, maybe monthly, to ensure you kind of refocused on the next most important thing, and that all activity, that execution, the tactics are linked back to your strategy. So we've talked a bit about why. Hopefully that gives you the context. I just wanted to talk a bit now about terminology. And I'm doing that because it's a really confusing subject. Strategy is a big topic. There's lots of different words used to describe the same thing. There's lots of different words used to describe same words used to describe different things. So I thought, let's just get a shared understanding between ourselves of some terminology. We'll start with business strategy, and then we'll look at the kind of 4 cornerstone elements of that. So here is a not a particularly nice looking slide, but it outlines VMOST, the vision, the mission, the objectives, the strategy and tactics that all form part of your business strategy. It's a well-known framework. And I think, as you know, it's I guess historically been applied more to corporate businesses, but as a startup powered by investment money, you're on a journey of discovery, disrupting markets, creating a better world for your users, building high growth business and making profits for your investors. So with this in mind, your vision is unlikely to change very much, if at all, but everything else is really up for grabs as you learn. And that's kind of a bit dissimilar to more traditional businesses. So your mission, your purpose could change at key stages based on learning. Your objectives are set for each investment. It's what you aim to achieve, even if the learning changes that along the way. Within this, you develop strategies to meet your objectives, and these can change with every new learning. And then there's your tactics, the day-to-day activities that are going to get you there. So hopefully this demonstrates how critical it is. What I'm trying to do here is show you that each level of VMOST, they're deeply interconnected. They're all about developing a strategy and keeping it on track. So it's why we advise, and I'm going to talk more about using tools and meetings to ensure you don't get lost along the way. For example, I guess many of you might have found in the past, I know this happens to me quite a lot, drowning in tactics, execution, and maybe meandering off course from kind of, what was the point of that again? Or maybe some people are the other way, obsessing on the mission, the kind of high level picture, when the learning suggests that it's not the right mission to create a viable business. So as I said before, as the founder, it's really your job to focus on this holistic business strategy to make sure the whole team is focused on the single next most important thing that's going to add value or decrease risk. It's not about overcomplicating it, but it is important to revisit your VMOST or regularly, each element of this, and make sure that everything you and the team are doing up and down that ladder are aligned with as a holistic strategy. There was an important point I wanted to raise here, which isn't directly related to VMOST, but is related to the O, the objectives at the center of there. So as most of you know, we've used OKRs for some time now, and they have been beneficial, but there've typically been so many of them created, they've kind of become noise, distracting all of us, I think, founder teams, investors, from what's really important to focus on next. And there's actually research out there that supports this. The OKRs are better for well-established corporate businesses, but not as useful for startups. So my message here, as I think you may be getting, is it's all about laser-like focus on the most important thing, the most value or the biggest risk. Objectives definitely still have their place, as you can see above, but we strongly advise you to have one single focused objective at each investment round. And I think it should be based on the fit you are trying to achieve with that investment. If you just focus on that, that should be all you need to get good results. So again, let me give you an example stage by stage. When your objective is problem fit, it should be measured by a target number of users, and that number will be dependent upon your market size, agreeing to work with you to solve the problem. That's your OKR. Problem fit, target number of users agreeing with you to solve the problem. When your objective is solution fit, the next stage, it should be measured again through a target number of users, and again depending on your market size, but this time accepting your offer, and your offer is your demo, your prototype, your unique value proposition, and your pricing model. So there's some kind of a commitment and understanding there to the commercial aspect of what you're offering to. And then beyond solution fit, when it's product fit or even beyond that, it should be measured by business model metrics, and I'm going to come on to talk about these, as they're much more consistent and focused ways of tracking business health using real data from your users. So hopefully that makes sense. I just thought I put in a bit of a fun slide to make it all a little bit more real. So this VMOST slide, very boring, very dry. They're theoretical terms. It can all seem a little bit like pie in the sky. So just to make it a bit more real, here's my Friday night strategy. So my vision, the world I want to see, is me sat on the couch with a belly full of really delicious food and a glass of wine in hand, watching a film. And my mission, what I'm going to do to make this happen, is I'm going to get a quality vegan Chinese meal. So my objective, what I hope to achieve with that, is to get it home delivered rather than cooking, rather than going out and getting it because I'm lazy. And my strategy, therefore, is Deliveroo. Obvious number one choice. And I've just listed here a few different tactics. So tactic number one, I click on Deliveroo. This is a fictional scenario, by the way, because I've never seen this happen, but Deliveroo is offline. Who knows why? So I've got some new learning there. That learning leads to me having to develop a new strategy. So rather than Deliveroo, I'm going to use Uber Eats instead. Tactic number two, I order, but my card is declined. I've got no cash. So again, there's some new information has come to light. What do I do about it? I'm going to have a new tactic, and that tactic is going to be to get my partner to pay because his card's working fine. And then tactic number three, there's actually no Chinese restaurants on Uber Eats serving vegan meal. So I've got to go all the way back up to my mission and change that. So I'm no longer going to go for a quality vegan Chinese meal. I'm going to go for a quality vegan Italian meal. So it's a little bit of fun, but I hope you can kind of see how all of these elements of VMOST are interrelated, and any piece of learning at any point in time may affect any part of that ladder. So what is a business model? This is next. Again, there's a lot out there on business models, and it's also really confusing to navigate. I like this quote because it pretty much sums it up, and it's also from the creator of the business model canvas, Alex Osterwalder, Strategizer Company. So a business model is how a company creates value for itself whilst delivering products and services for customers. Really simple. There's tons of tools out there that can help you develop a business model. And I'm going to come on to talk about two key tools that I think are A, simple, and B, will help you develop and track your business model, which is critical to building a profitable and scalable business. And these two tools are the Lean Canvas, which I'll come on to talk about, and business model, and 9 specific tech startup business model and metrics. So let's talk first about the Lean Canvas. It's Ash Maurya's Lean Canvas, your one-page business plan that shows at a glance the key elements of your business. So your business model is made up of A, your business plan, and B, your business model and metrics. So it is a deceptively simple tool, and I imagine quite a few of you were looking at that thinking, gosh, I've probably not seen that in a while, but I did at some point on this journey. But it's deceptively simple, it's incredibly useful, and it's developed from Osterwalder's business model canvas, but it's focused specifically for startups rather than corporates, which is why we advocate it. As I said, I'm pretty sure all of you will have seen it. You've probably, some of you may have one gathering some virtual dust on a shelf somewhere, but used as a living, breathing document, your Lean Canvas sheds light on what you need to focus on next, what you've learned and what you still have to learn. And it's again that laser-like focus which is key to your strategy to successfully grow your business. So what I like about the Lean Canvas is it's got everything on one page. It's really quick to update. It's really quick to put together in the first place. It's a great communication tool, both for your team and for your investors alike. So it covers all bases. It's like it is your business on a page. It'll help you identify very quickly links, disconnects, and assumptions, and the thing you need to focus on next, and you can use it for communication. In the early stages, I'm sure many of you have, and many of you will use it frequently as you make that continuous learning around assumptions. But the point I'm trying to make here is even as you grow more confident in your business model, it's an incredibly helpful and insightful tool. It'll help you prepare your learnings from one stage, your planning for the next, and then your means of communicating this. So I'd really encourage each and every one of you to get yours out, brush it off, and see how it helps bring clarity to the biggest risks and unknowns in your current plan. And then share this with investors at the next updates. Number 2, your business model and metrics. So your business model is ultimately how you plan to charge your users. And with metrics, you can track progress of the business health against them. The business model providing the detail for the 2 boxes. The business model provides detail for the 2 boxes in the Lean Canvas. So just looking back at this, the revenue box and the metrics box. So you can see how it's the Lean Canvas is kind of the overview, but the business model is providing detail for those. So there's a ton of potential business models out there, and we've tried and used many of them in the past, but right now, with all the research that we've done, we're advising on starting with 9 business models and metrics that are specifically focused on tech startups. So I've labeled them on this slide. I know it's quite a busy slide, but on the left, I've just called one out so we can actually look at the metrics. And that's a marketplace model, because I know quite a few of you are running marketplace models. And on the right is the list of the other 8 models and a brief summary of what they are. But they each have a set of 3 to 5 metrics associated with them. So it's really simple to use. You pick your business model, and in the early days, we definitely recommend only picking one. But in the later stages, you may have a hybrid business model, or you may have a number of different business models you're running concurrently. So you pick the one that's most suited to your business, and you build up your financial forecast based on these. And I'm going to come on to financial forecast later on. As I mentioned before, OKRs are what we used to use, and obviously they have key results. But it's just too easy to create endless OKRs and kind of lose sight of the wood for the trees. So this is a very simple, clear, and quite prescriptive way that will help you establish, test, and track your business model. And finally, I just like this quote. It came from Board of Innovation. I'm not sure if they ran the research, if they got it from somewhere else, but business model innovation has been proven to give businesses a 25 times competitive advantage compared to product innovation. So just thinking about focus here. And if you dwell on that for a moment, like a 25 times competitive advantage, who wouldn't want that for their business? So again, we naturally tend to focus on the product or service, the shiny new toy. And these things are really important, but they're just a piece of the whole business plan and business model. So the real value is created when you focus more broadly across all the areas of the Lean Canvas, and also focus on developing and testing different ways to charge users and make money. That's where the real competitive advantage can come from. So next I'm going to move on to talk about traction model. So I'm pretty sure some of you will have heard this term and may have some idea what it is, but not be 100% clear. So the traction model is the measure of a working business model and plan. So it's the way you measure what we've just talked about. And it's the rate, traction is the rate at which a business captures monetizable value from its users. So, as I've said a number of times already, it's normal to think solutions first, but investors are looking for evidence of traction, a business model stories that promises a return on their investment within a set time frame. And this is really all about how big is the market opportunity and how will you make money. So as a founder, you need to be able to quickly and simply put a model together and test it. And this is where the traction model comes into its own. So here is a traction model, or kind of at least the output of the data that you put into it. So you'll have seen this. It's a hockey stick curve. I'm sure you'll have all had some access and discussion around this previously, but you may not all have one. So traction models, like all of these tools, they're incredibly simplistic, and that may lead people to think that they're only useful at early stages, but they're really not. So the traction model may be simplistic. You set some rough targets based on high-level assumptions about projected revenue, customer lifetime value, but it's the speed at which you can test some assumptions around these things that is their great strength. So every time you conceive of a new business model, and let's be honest, you're not just going to come up with a business model on day one and that'll be the right way to take the business forward. Even well-established businesses are always looking at new business models. So every time you conceive of a new business model, an altered pricing structure, or you learn something about customer churn rate, you can quickly run the numbers again. You can plug those revisions back into your financial forecast, which we'll come on to, and then you'll have a better idea about what you need to focus on next. And then you can track your progress against the metrics against that. So you can create a traction model in Lean Stack. And I think a couple of weeks ago, Dan Collins took you through that in a bit more detail. But I've also built a simplified traction model into our financial forecast. Again, to keep things simple, it's all in one place. So let's move on to the financial forecast. So what is a financial forecast? It's a standard business tool. So it's part of a financial model, which is an accounting tool. It's simply a spreadsheet that forecasts a business's financial performance into the future. The forecast is typically based on a company's historical performance, not so easy in the early days of a startup, but also the assumptions about the future and the business models you plan to use. The reason this is really useful is because the output of a financial forecast can be so helpful in decision-making and strategic planning. Also performing financial analysis, whether inside or outside the company. So we think for founders and teams in particular, it's really useful to make decisions about things like, what is the next most important thing to focus on? What targets do I need to set and how can I measure progress against them? What do I need to budget for? And what would my next investment ask be? Have I got the evidence to support raising capital and valuing a business? So it covers many more things than that, but I think for startups and the businesses that we're working with in particular right now, they are the key elements that will make this a really helpful document. So here is a financial forecast. We have built this tool at Nova. It blends a number of things that I've spoken about already and some that I haven't. So it blends the traction model, it blends the 9 business models and metrics, and the P&L. There's actually some added bonuses in there too, which I'll come on to. So that essentially is how you can create your financial forecast. We've specifically designed it for the needs of a startup and its investors. It's really relatively quick to put together, and it enables you to become that visionary backcaster I referred to earlier, because it highlights the levers that each business has to play with to create the best possible business model and investable financial forecast. So once you've built this, you can then test out those different approaches, revisit progress on a monthly basis, and in line with the key metrics which are established as a health measure for your business. So we've already piloted this with a number of businesses in our portfolio, and honestly, we're seeing some fantastic results. It really is amazing how what appear to be very insightful decisions just become glaringly obvious. They just talk to you from the spreadsheet. So for example, I've shared this one a few times already, but it's such a good example. In the first month review with QBunk, it was obvious that venues selling food as well as drink were twice as valuable in terms of revenue to QBunk. So immediately Paul changed the strategy and decided to stop focusing on bars and start focusing on venues selling food as well as drink. So this was a major change and has had a great benefit to the business already. So it's such a game-changing tool. And this is really probably one of the nubs of what I want to talk about today. We want every single business that we're invested in to have a financial forecast in place within the next month or so. It's one of my key initiatives to help grow the value of your businesses, and I will personally work with each of you to get it in place and to help you understand how we've been using it to track progress and drive strategy. For anyone I've not done this with yet, I know I've been working with a number of people, but there's still many more I haven't. Please just after the session or after you've watched this video, contact me directly and we'll put something in the diary. It'll also be really good actually to get more people using it so we can get feedback on the tool. You know, there's going to be things that we can improve about it. In fact, I'm probably improving it, the template, a couple of times a week at the moment anyway. So yeah, key message here. I'd really like to see financial forecasts in place for all of our businesses so we can help just drive the value of the business in a more strategic way. So we've talked through a number of different tools that will help you develop the strategy for the business. I thought it was worth just summarizing those before we move to the next stage. So I think ultimately I've tried to keep it simple as possible. There are many more tools to help you to evolve strategy out there. There are even more tools that we use, but it's so important that you're just focusing on doing the right next thing rather than getting bogged down in tools and process, that I didn't want to overwhelm everybody. So let's just talk through each of these just to recap. Your business strategy. This is the overall term for the modeling and decision-making to create and capture value from a market or markets and beat the competition. It's critical to focus on business strategy from day one and continuously alongside product and users. Remember that Venn diagram. Then there's your business plan. So this is the lean canvas, the one-pager of written assumptions and learnings about your business. It really should drive everything. It should be a living document that is used to help you step away from the day-to-day, take that helicopter view, and also share it in communications with team and investors. Then you have your business models, your metrics. These are the different approaches that you will take to charge your users, and you track the progress with the metrics. Again, really simple, streamlined metrics, not tons of metrics to keep everyone focused. Next, we have the traction model, which is a quick financial model. It's a measure of the output of a working business model and plan. It can be used and probably should be used for every new idea you want to test about pricing or ways to make money. And then there's the financial forecast. So this is your detailed financial model and 5-year P&L. I'm going to come on to show you an example in more detail. It forecasts your business financial performance into the future so you can be more certain that it's financially viable and also tracking progress along the way. So it's not just, oh, here's a 5-year P&L and we'll refer back to it next year, but actually using it on a monthly basis. And at the bottom here, I've not mentioned these yet, but I wanted to throw it in. So we have regular updates with investors. Quarterly investor updates are linked to your strategy because it's really about enabling you to communicate your strategy and progress against that. I guess agree the strategy and communicate progress with investors. Moving forward, we're going to be asking for a written update every 3 months. And it's going to be a very simple template that we'll provide you with that covers some of these key elements. And then every 6 months, I think what we'd aim to do is get together and have the update more face-to-face. So the quarterly investor update template hasn't even been written yet. All of these tools are evolving in one way or another, and you're using them and feeding them back to me in particular would be really, really helpful. So that'll be helpful for your business, most importantly, in evolving the strategy and taking that forward. But for us as a business to develop the toolkit, we're always looking to improve. And I guess then just finally, who owns this? So it's pretty obvious. You know, if you think about Elon Musk, you can't imagine anybody else owning his strategy other than him and as founders of the business. You know, your strategy is the cornerstone of your business, so it should be your main focus as a founder from day one. I guess if you're not focusing on strategy, you are in danger of a kind of researched phenomenon called strategic drift, and that leads to a deterioration of your actions that are likely to result in the failure of your business to be able to respond to changes in the environment with inevitable consequences. And obviously, that's what we want to avoid. So yeah, it's really important that we call it out. We need to focus on strategy. And I think the tools that I've shared with you today should really help you do that in a simple and focused way. So as a final reminder before I move on to take you through the financial forecast template, if you do not have a lean canvas or a financial forecast in place, or if you just want a refresher, please contact me as soon as possible. I'll set up a session with you and your PM and get you started. So you're just going to have to bear with me now while I change my screen so I can take you through this. So bear with me a sec.
Can I ask a question before we move on, or is questions for the end?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Just before you move on to the finance forecast, you talked about having that high level strategy, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to pull my head above the water to be like, strategy, where are we at? Let's have a high level session to work out what we're doing. And you then said you need to do it so that your team can know what's going on. But so often, I'm 3 years into this and I'm still struggling with this in terms of the founder does the high level, and if you've not got a big team, obviously, you know, you do have Nova that is part of our teams as well. How have you got any advice on the balance between having that high level focus, say once a month, and then actually you then having to take that on to then do all the work? Any advice on that? Because I still feel like it's a juggling act.
Okay, so number one, you're not alone in that. I think it's just inevitable. It's really hard being a founder. It's probably you've got too much tactical stuff to do anyway, never mind the strategy. So already you've got too much just trying to do. And I guess the advice that I would give is it's about having the rigor and the discipline to set time aside to focus strategically. And kind of get your head out of the day-to-day. And the reason I'm representing these tools is because they're a really good way, rather than thinking, right, how am I going to get my head out of this and into this, or where do I even start? These tools almost by default drive that change in mindset. So just by updating your lean canvas or updating your financial forecast, strategy, it kind of almost like it kind of shouts at you, this is what you need to be focusing on next. You'll see the links between different sections on the canvas, or you'll see the different levers in the financial forecast, and they should just make it clear. Now, it's not what, you know, it's not going to be I'm trying to think of the medical word, panacea. It's not a panacea for every strategic problem you're going to have. And I don't know if I've answered your question directly, but I'll happily, you know, talk to you more outside of this to see if maybe try these. I don't know. Do you think that they would solve the problem?
I think they would, yeah. And I think it is, as you probably say about discipline, to make sure that they are updated, because with some of these documents you've been going through, I've not looked at them for quite a while. And so actually, if there was, say, a day a month where these were updated, perhaps that is the keystone.
Yeah, and I think doing that with, you know, if they're updated, what we found really useful with, particularly with the financial forecast that we've been piloting recently, is that it's not just doing it in isolation. So whether you're doing that with, you know, a business growth mentor or an advisor, it's the discussion around what's changing that can spark the ideas. So that would be something I'd recommend doing as well. This is, let me just make that a little bit bigger. So this is what we call BitBaby's business strategy or financial forecast. So Rachel very kindly from BitBaby very kindly said I could share this one. And I'm not sharing it because it's perfect. You know, far from it. It's in its very early stages. But the reason I've chosen BitBaby to share with you is because it's fairly simple, so it's relatively easy to explain. So let me just give you a quick overview. In this document, we have a number of things. You'll recognize the first three: the traction model we've spoken about, the financial forecast we've spoken about, and the business model metrics we've spoken about. There are other sheets in here that are all related to your strategy. So there's a fact sheet, which is not pre-populated, but you are going to be making assumptions based on facts, and it's usually good to log those facts somewhere. There's a pipeline sheet. Now, I've actually just updated this in the template document. Really, I think it's important to track. I know a few of our businesses are doing this, but once you start to get data from users, or once even just working through your pipeline, it's really important to kind of track the campaign activity that's driving sales and the pipeline activity that's making progress, because all of that is directly linked. You know, it's the outcome of your strategy. So I think it's important to track that, and it can be tracked in here. They're the elements that once you've got an active live campaign, or you've got a live product with users where you need to be tracking daily. So this is much more about the execution and tracking the execution against your strategy. And then there's two other pages in here. One is the quarterly update. So we'll put the template for the quarterly update in here. Then it's all there, because that's essentially, the quarterly update is like your vision, mission, objectives. It's really VMOSed on a page. And that's what I've tried to do in this document, is include things that take you from the vision of your business all the way down to the tactics of your business in one place. So prioritized experiments is the final piece that's tactical, and that's really about taking the assumptions and acting upon them and logging that. So I'm not going to focus on anything facts, pipeline, quarterly update, prioritized experiments. I'm not focusing on. And if anyone's interested, I can run other sessions on some of those at a later stage. What I am going to focus on is these three elements that we've talked about today, because really they're at the core of the strategy stuff I'm sharing with you today. So traction model, it's really simple. There are some yellow cells, not many of them, and these are the only cells you need to update. So Rachel and I went through this together, and Rachel decided that she wanted her revenue to be 5 million in 3 years' time. From the research that she's done, of which there is a lot, she's pretty clear on the pricing to be around just under £180. And because it's a hardware product, it's a device for pregnant women to check the movements in the womb. Sorry if I haven't explained that correctly, but there or thereabouts. It's likely to be a one-off purchase, so there is no lifetime value, or the lifetime value is 1. So I've put that at 1. And what you can see here is it's created the hockey stick curve that we spoke about before, the traction model. And then what this section here does is it splits out the numbers from month 1, month 6, month 12, and month 36. You can change those numbers, but that's how we've chosen to do it for BitBaby. Month 36 being because it's a 3-year time frame to get to the 5 million. And what you can see here is it's calculating from just those little bits of information that in month 1, it's using a 10x formula. Actually, it's backcasting. So it is backcasting. So let's talk about month 36. So if in month 36, Rachel needs just under 28,000 customers in order to hit that 5 million target, based on the assumption they're going to be paying £180 each, then backcasting from that, divided by 10, divided by 10, divided by 10, means that in month 1, we need 28, month 6, 280, and month 12. I guess you get the point. So we can quite easily see there what targets Rachel needs to achieve. And once that's done, and it literally takes a matter of minutes to do it, we can then start to build the financial forecast. Now, this is a much more complicated looking spreadsheet, but it is actually really simple. So let me take you through it. I'll just talk about the structure of the sheet first of all. So we identify the business model. Now, it's pretty simple for Rachel. It's a hardware product, and the hardware business model certainly suits this the most. So we selected hardware. You're probably wondering how we did that. We went into the business model metrics sheet, and we basically just looked at the 9 different business models are all identified here. So let's just go to hardware, since that's what we're talking about. So hardware, selling a physical device to consumers or business, tick, that sounds like BitBaby. And there are 4 key metrics that we're going to use to measure the health of that business and the progress of that business. So we just plug those metrics in here, and I'll go on to explain more about that then. So we've identified it's a hardware business model. We've plugged in the key metrics. So the other things that we've done is Rachel's identified the start month. Now, because BitBaby is a hardware business and there's all kinds of hoops that need to be jumped through in terms of regulation and building a prototype and testing that and all kinds of things, Rachel's start date isn't going to be until January 22 in terms of when she can actually start converting users into customers. For many of you, you're already in that position, or it's going to be much sooner than that. Then we track the months. So the months are just listed as numbers to make it a very usable sheet. And here, for each month, we have the forecast, what we work on initially, and then month by month, we put in the actuals here. So pretty simple to use. You can see in row 5 here, this has pulled out the figures from the traction model, and it automatically does that, this spreadsheet. So thanks to Chris Alcock, if you're listening. I appreciate the help with that. So you can see 28 in month 1, 280 there or thereabouts in month 6. So that's giving us a guide now to build out our financial forecast. So then what we did, we don't start plugging in this information here immediately, because mostly it's based on more detailed information. So you can see here, we've got the key metrics for the hardware revenue stream, but here the detail for the hardware revenue stream. So what we did with Rachel and myself and Ben, we started to plug this in. So what's the sales price of the main product? So the key metrics helped us, the calculations for the key metrics. So you can see here, if we're tracking monthly revenue, that's the total revenue in any given month. So we knew immediately, well, we need to know how much we're selling it for. So we plugged in the price, the sales price of the product. Then I'll move to row 18. How many customers do we need? Now, we had that in row 5, but we only had it for months 1 and month 6 and month 12 and 36. So we've added in some calculations to break that down month by month, what that actually needs to look like. And we've done that by adding in a growth rate. So what does that growth rate need to look like in order to be able to hit the figures that will get us to that 5 million in 3 years? We then felt that customer referral is going to be a big part of this model. So whilst we might need 56 new customers in month 2, we think there's going to be a referral rate of 50%. I mean, this is very early stages and yet to be proved. So total referred customers from the month before is 14, which means we actually need to acquire 42 customers. That's 56 customers that we need, minus 14 that are being referred from the previous month, gives us a figure of 42. So how do we find them? How much is it going to cost us? So we've put in a best guess at the cost of acquisition, how many customers we actually need to acquire to convert 10% of them into revenue-paying customers, this 56 figure. So it's a very quick whistle-stop tour of how we've done it, and I'm not expecting any of you to do this in isolation. As I said, if you haven't done this with me yet, please give me a shout and we'll pencil something in so I can help you pull this together. But the aim here is not about on day 1 getting it perfect at all. It's about doing it quickly. You know, the traction model probably takes 5 minutes. The financial forecast maybe an hour the first time you do it. So we have identified it as a hardware business. We've set some detail around what the hardware revenue stream looks like, and we have then been able to calculate the key metrics. And a lot of this is auto-calculating against those. Now, as with many businesses, it may be that there's more than one business model that may be relevant. So we do think that for BitBaby, there may be a software as a service revenue stream that may complement this. We've not worked out the detail yet, but we have plugged in the key metrics from the business model metric sheet into here, and we'll do some work on that at a later date. But it's not important now. We're not even sure if it's going to happen. I suppose the other thing to say is that there's been 1 or 2 instances, I can't remember which businesses they are yet, where they don't directly fit one of these, and we've used a mixed business model, where we've taken key metrics from a number of different business models because we felt that's the right thing to do. But it's a pretty rare instance, and normally on day 1, you'll be able to pick one and go for it. So just to finish off the revenue streams part of this financial forecast, we have a summary at the bottom because you may have, I think we've got one business with 4 different types of revenue streams in it already. So it can summarize those here with a total figure at the bottom. The second bottom half of the spreadsheet is about costs. So top half revenue, second half costs. You've got your direct cost of sales. You've got your indirect cost and overheads. The template's pre-populated with example data, but obviously this is for you to change and update as needed. And then at the bottom here, it auto-calculates a monthly profit and loss. So this is really helpful for a number of reasons. One, it's needed for to get investment through, and it's a really good way of tracking whether this business is going to be financially viable. So normally, the minute we've put together the data in a model, I'll go down to look at the EBITDA. I'll always expect it to be negative to start, but this shows a really nice, healthy trend of that negative going down and swinging into a positive. Now, that doesn't say to me, brilliant, we've nailed it with this business. We're, as you can see, we're 1.5 years away from even selling this thing and making some learnings around the business model. But it is encouraging and proves that we've got the right, the right numbers of people, the right sales price, all the kind of key levers all would appear to stack up for this business model. Sometimes you do this and that figure looks terrible all the way through, and then you've built some wrong assumptions. Not wrong, you've built assumptions into your business model that mean it's not a sustainable business or not likely to be one. So that's almost the first indication that you'd get out of this, that the business model isn't going to work for you. The only other thing I need to really show you is on the far right here, we have a yearly P&L. So again, this auto calculates, but this is really what's needed for investment purposes to get that signed off by our investment managers. It's only showing year 1 because we've only done year 1 so far, but it auto populates a lot of important data for you. So I think with that whistle-stop tour, I'm not expecting you just to be able to take this and do it by yourselves, but the key messages from today, as I said, are, strategy is important from day 1, as important from day 1 as it is all the way through. Simple tools and forcing yourself to set aside time to think strategically and not get caught up in the execution And using this as using these tools, the lean canvas, the financial forecast, as a means to communicate with team and investors are really helpful. And I think that's probably the end of what I have to say. So happy to open up for any questions.